In this problem, I'd like to solve for an area under the curve. Okay, and the question specifically is, what proportion of values fall above a z of 1.20? Okay, so what proportion of values fall above a z of 1.20? Okay, now I've written down the steps here, what I recommend you do whenever you try and solve for an area under the curve. The first thing you want to do is sketch a normal curve, and I have that here. Okay, now it doesn't have to be a perfect normal curve. The purpose of sketching this is simply to help make sure that you find the right area under the curve for your answer. Right? Next, we're going to label the z-score on the curve. Okay, I'm going to label 2 points here. First, I know the center of this curve is at 0. That's a z-score of 0, right? Because the mean is at the center, or really the mean, median, and mode. They're all equal here, and they're equal to a z of 0. So if I'm looking for the proportion of values above z of 1.2, the first thing you should ask yourself is, am I looking for a place above 0 or below 0? And if you look at this value, you'll notice that it's positive. So you want to look for a place above 0. So we're going to look for a z of 1.2, and this is just an approximation. It doesn't matter so much where you put it over here. It doesn't have to be exact, in other words. Just do the best you can. Okay, the shading is to help us, or this graph is to help us solve the problem and to avoid making mistakes. So here I draw a line. I'm going to label this a z of 1.20. Okay, and that's what I have here. So label the z-score on the curve. We just did step 2. Next, I want to shade the area that represents your answer. So what proportion of values fall above a z of 1.2? So notice that's saying above 1.2. What values fall above 1.2? So that's this way, right? So I'm going to shade over here, and that's going to tell me that my answer is in this area of the curve, as opposed to, for example, over here. Okay, I don't want it over here. I want above 1.2. So if you think of your table in the back of the book, we had our proportion in the body and proportion in the tail, to name 2 examples, 2 different types of things we have in our z-table. So I want to ask you this, is this the body, which I also call the larger portion, or is this the tail, which is the smaller portion? Well, if you look at this, it is the tail, it's the smaller portion. So what we want to do is in your z-table, okay, it could look like this here, you have your z column, you want to find a z of 1.20, and then you're going to look up your column that says proportion in the tail. Okay, so proportion in the tail for a z of 1.2, say proportion in the tail. If you look in your z-table, you should find a z of 1.2 has a proportion in the tail of 0.1151. Okay, so this area here is equal to 0.1151. Okay, so our answer is, erasing this here to make room, 0.1151 is our answer. Or I could convert that to decimal form, and that would be converted to 11.51% of the values fall above z equals 1.20. Now I asked in the problem what proportion of scores fall above a z of 1.20. So the best answer to give is in proportion form, or decimal form, 0.1151. But I just converted it to percentage form to give you practice at that as well. So the answer is 0.1151. But you should also be prepared to convert that to percentage form if I asked you what percentage of scores fall to the right of a z of 1.20. So if you were to convert that to percentage form, if I asked that, then you would say 11.51% of the values fall above a z of 1.20. You know, one other thing, just for additional practice, if 11.51% of the values fall above a z of 1.2, or if we put it in the form of proportions, then we have 0.1151. What values fall below 1.20? Well, what we could do, we could look it up in our table, or you should recall that the entire area under the curve is 1.0. So I could actually subtract 0.1151 from 1.0, and that would give me 0.8849. So this area here is 0.8849, this entire area from 1.2 downward, or this is the proportion in the body. If you looked up a z of 1.20 in your table, and if you looked up in the body, you should see a proportion of 0.8849. And then finally, just to be complete, converting that into percentage form, we could say 88.49% of the values fall below a z of 1.2. Okay? Now, in summary here, I was asking simply, what proportion of values fall above a z of 1.20? So the answer is 0.1151. And that's all you need to put for the answer. So I just wanted to give you additional practice as well of converting this to a percentage form. And then finally, being able to identify the complement of this answer, or if the tail is 0.1151, giving you practice at identifying what the remainder of the area would be, or what the body would be, or the larger portion.